Hi everyone, it's Lucy from My Crazy Craft Life, and I'm here today with the Flavor of the Month card kit for March 2020 from Scrapping for Less. The theme is A Farmhouse Spring, and I loved this kit. I think it is so adorable, and there are just so many options for spring. I think it's awesome. I started out by doing some ink blending. This is actually on from my sneak peek card. And I used the stencil that came as part of the banana split level, and it's a butterfly stencil from Scrapping for Less. And I didn't end up using all of the colors that you originally saw there. I ended up just using the fossilized amber, the picked raspberry, cracked pistachio, peacock feathers. And you will see I get more of those colors in there. So I get the orange kind of color with the pink and the yellow. I get a purpley kind of color with the cracked pistachio and the picked raspberry. And then I get kind of just a more blue-green color with the peacock feathers and the cracked pistachio. But I love ink blending. It's probably my absolute favorite thing to do. But then I cut this panel down to 4 inches by 5 1/4 for an A2 size card. And I use the white organza ribbon from collection number 2 and to tie around there. The stamp set that I'm using is Hello Spring stamp set from Scrapping for Less from collection number 1. And you can see there I have that green oval cut out and stamped there. So I originally do the green, and then I decided I didn't like the green. The green is from the card kit. It is spearmint in your card kit. And I decided I just wanted to do white, that I thought white worked better. And so I ended up redoing that part of it. But so what I end up doing is stamping the image, and since this is kind of a more solid stamp, I do stamp it quite a few times, and I used my mini Misty just to make sure that it stayed where I wanted it to. And I popped the sentiment on right onto there. The other thing I did is, instead of using black like I probably normally would, I just thought because the colors were softer, I used a gray, and I used soft granite from Hero Arts is the color that I ended up using to stamp this, and I stamped it quite a few times, and then I heat embossed it with just clear embossing powder. And I also used some Brutus Monroe embossing ink after I stamped it a few times to make sure that I got a nice clear crisp image. Then I cleaned off the stamps, and I just used the embossing ink to put that embossing powder on and make sure that it stays there, because the Hero Arts soft granite ink is it dries pretty quickly, and I wanted to make sure that I got a good coat on of the embossing powder. So you'll see me doing that in just a minute, but I love how this card turned out. Like I said, I love those colors. Those are some of my favorite. And I did remember to use my embossing tool, even though I'm using clear embossing powder, so of course, you know, the one time that it really wouldn't matter, I remember to use it, since half the time I don't remember. But there is that. So like I said, I do just love how this card came out. I think the colors are adorable, and I love the little bunny rabbit on there. But there you see that I'm I peeled off that green. And then I did use the enamel dots that were part of, I believe they were part of collection number 2 that I received. And they were a nice kind of bright pink. Oh no, there they are right there. Collection number 3 is where they were actually from, because this is collection number 3, and this is my first card that I'm making from the kit following the sketches. So on this one I used sketch number 3, and it's a tall and skinny card, and even though it's a tall and skinny card, it's not like one of those 7-inch cards, you know, by like 3 inches. This one is actually 5 1/2 by 3 1/2 inches. And for this one I used collection number 3, which includes Bloom Wildly paper by Scrapping for Less, Bloom Wildly stamp by Scrapping for Less, enamel dots by Gina Marie Designs, buttons by Buttons Galore, natural twine by Doris. So that's what was included in this kit. So this, I just cut down all the papers and kind of, you know, mimicked the sketch that was part of the that you can download off of Scrapping for Less for each of the card kits. For every month they give you different ones to use. Now the banners for this card I cut to 1.5 inches wide, or no, about 1.25 inches wide. I'm sorry, I had them 1.5 inches, but then I thought they were a little too thick, so I cut them down. So they end up being about 1.25 inches, and the longer one is about 4 3/4, and the shorter one is about 4 inches. The circle that I used, I did pop up with some fun foam, and that circle's about 2.5 inches, and that fits that circle stamp pretty well. It could fit it with a little border around it, but I ended up cutting it out and cutting it just to be the circle where the line actually lines up. And this one I kind of did the same thing. I initially stamped it with black, and then I decided I wanted to use gray to soften it up a little, because these are the papers are kind of pastel, and I just like the look of the gray a little bit better. And this again, I used the soft gray or soft granite from Hero Arts. And then the strip that is across the card is about 2 inches wide by 3.5 inches, or no, 3.25 inches wide by about 1.5 inches long, I guess. That goes across the card. And like I said, the card itself is 3.5 inches by 5.5 inches, and then the panel is the 3.25 inches by 5.25 inches. So that is how I made this first card. And after I kind of pieced everything together, I just cut off the edges that were overlapping before I adhered it to the card base itself. And so for the card base, I just made the card base and then ended up cutting off, cutting it down to the 3.5 inches. So I just cut off the side. Now do make sure that you cut off the side that isn't folded, where the crease isn't, because, and I'm only saying that because I actually did that before. Not on this particular card, but I was cutting a card down and I cut the wrong side, and then I just had 2 pieces of paper instead of a folded card. So make sure you think about that before you cut it down, so you don't end up with just 2 pieces of paper. And then I didn't add anything else to this card. I just thought this was kind of perfect just the way it was. I didn't want to add any of the ephemera, or not ephemera, the buttons. I kind of thought about it, but the peaches in this paper that I ended up using, I didn't like with the pink buttons, and then the green matched, but I just couldn't find a way that I thought I wanted it a different way. So that was it. That was that card. My next card is using collection number 4, and included with collection number 4 is Daisy Garden Paper by Scrapping for Less, Daisy Garden Stamp by Scrapping for Less, Enamel Dots by Gina Marie Designs, and White Paper Daisies by Doris. And for this card I used sketch number 1, and I really like how this card came out. This is kind of probably one of my favorites from the collection. So what I did was I cut down a frame square, and then I just used my Fisker scissors, I think they're called Cloud, that cut the border around it. And for that square is about 3.25 inches. And then I cut or the frame, not so much the square. But what I did was I used the smaller. So there was actually one of the squares for the nesting die set that was missing from it. So it made the frame thicker than like if I would have just used the next one up. And the reason I did that is because I wanted to make sure that the entire hole was covered, but I figured I could use the square on something else because I love this paper. And then the smaller square is about 2.5 inches. And that's the one that's going to be in the center that you will see. The card again is a A2 size card, so it's 5.5 by 4.25 inches, and I cut a panel down to 4 inches by 5.25. And then the strips that are going to go across the panel on the bottom, but on top of the panel, but on the bottom of the layering, I cut at a little over 1/2 inch, probably about 5/8 of an inch, and then the strip that's underneath that I end up putting the rippled pattern in, or not rippled, the scalloped edge on, is approximately the same size, just a little tiny bit bigger, just because I not folded it, I adhered it on top of it when you get there. And what I also did was I stamped the image with a brown mocha ink from Your Next stamp that we received in a past kit, along with a yellow and a green that I can't remember the names of from Your Next stamp, but I used those little cubes to stamp the flowers. So I stamped the image of the watering can and then the sentiment in the brown or the mocha, and then the yellow and the green I used to stamp the daisies for that daisy stamp on the bottom. And then I used that same brown just to edge around the square, just to give it a little more definition on it. And then I thought it looked kind of cool with the daisies on the bottom. Kind of reminded me of dirt, like they were planted in the dirt. And then I just kind of pieced this all together. To finish it off, I do end up adding some of the white daisies on the top and the bottom, just in a line across, and then I also use some of the enamel dots on the section itself, and I do pop up that smallest square with some fun foam. So this is where I just start kind of piecing everything together. Sorry, my head keeps bopping in and out, but I'm trying to make sure that I get it on there and I get it on there straight. So what you also get as part of this kit is a cut, emboss, and stencil die by Doris, and you'll see me use that in a little bit on a different card. Again, you receive that butterfly stencils, which is adorable. You'll be seeing some more cards from me this month with that, using that stencil. Bead tray by Bead Alone, and sequins by Scrapping for Less. And I just picked up these trays not too long ago, a set of them. And I loved them. You know, I always thought it was kind of, I don't know, I was like, yeah, is that really something I need? Like, what's the big deal? You know, you just pick them up. But they are really, really nice. At one, not only keeping your sequence all together, but for, like, I haven't seen that they stick to it. Or you know how they get stuck on your fingers and you're like flicking them and you end up with sequins all over the place because you they get stuck to your fingers and stuff like that. And I just don't really notice that with that. You know, it's easy to flip them over and whatnot in there. I really liked them, so I was excited when I saw that they were also going to be a part of this kit. So that's everything that you receive with the banana split level. The cardstock that you're going to receive is one piece of vellum, and then you will receive spearmint, grout gray, cotton candy, grape sickle, and whipped cream, along with 2 sheets of Nina 110-pound Classic Crest smooth solar white cardstock and 4 A2 size white envelopes. So that's what you receive with that. So that's all your cardstock in your banana split level extra packet. And then once I get into the rest of these cards, I will go through the other collections. But here you can see, like I said, I'm just finishing up that. I just glued down all of those flowers. And you know, these flowers are really cool because I think you could actually color them or maybe use some watercolor on them. But for this one, I thought that matched well with the white, so I left them. But I was actually thinking of other things I could do with them. And like I said, maybe using some watercolor with them and make them different colors. I think that would be really cool. That you might see on a card later this month too. So for my next card, I am using sketch number 3, and this is from collection number 2. It is Farmhouse Floral Paper by Scrapping for Less, Farmhouse Floral Stamp by Scrapping for Less, Enamel Dots by Gina Marie Designs, and then White Organza Ribbon by Doris, and that is what I used on the first card for the sneak peek. Now for this one with the stamp, I decided I wanted the kind of leafy border around the stamp to be that green from Your Next stamp that I had sitting there already because I already used it on the other one. But I thought that would be kind of cool to have it in the green instead of doing it gray. Then I did stamp the center image in gray, and then I just colored them with some Copics. Real quick coloring, nothing fancy there. The stamp itself is shaded in some areas, so it actually gives you quite a bit of shading with the coloring. So even though you're putting, you know, a green on top of it, because of the shading, it actually looks darker and lighter in some areas. So that's kind of cool. And as you see me coloring, you will notice that I'm kind of flipping it over, because I did stamp it on one side and then I stamped it in the black, and then I decided I didn't want it in the black, I wanted it in the green. So that's why you'll kind of see me flipping over. But I will say, for me, the gray was hard to see the detail, like exactly what was flowers or what was leaves, and so that's why you'll see me flipping it over back and forth so that I can see what I'm actually looking at. And again, I'm just following the sketch on this. For the scalloped area, I just used my Fiskars Cloud scissors again to cut down just a plain piece of white cardstock, because I thought that matched really well and kind of broke up the patterns that were, you know, between the pattern paper that I'm using. And the entire panel that I'm kind of creating with these couple different things is going to be the entire size of the card. So it ends up being 5.5 by 4.25. The circle dies that I use, the smallest circle, the one with the image on there, is about 2.25 inches, and then the frame that I use ends up being just over 2.75 inches, and I just use, you know, the next size frame up to create that, or the next size frame, the next size die up from that original die, circle die that I used to cut out the image, just to create that frame. So I use the two of them, the next size up and then that one, and out of some of the pattern paper. And then as part of this stamp, you receive kind of a banner, and then the words or the sentiments in the sentiment stamp fit perfectly inside of that banner. So for this particular card, I decided to use Thinking of You. So that's how I did that one. Now the piece on top measures the 4.25 inches by 3.5, and then I cut after, like below that, you need to make sure, if you're going to do it, that you have it a little over the 2 inches, to make sure that you can't, you know, that it's going to cover everything, just in case your card's a little long, or, you know, whatever is going on with it. So I would just cut it a little longer. You can always just cut off the top or the bottom or whatever, cut off the sides, whatever you need to make sure that it's going to cover it. And then the piece that I made into the scalloped, I cut, it was a little less than 1/2 inch. It was honestly just a piece that I had laying there, and I thought the white, like I said, that the white looked perfect. So then I just kind of pieced it all together according to the sketch. I was trying to make sure that I actually, one, put everything on straight, which tends to be a problem for me, getting anything on straight. But then I was also kind of going back and forth. You know, sometimes when you make your decision on what you're going to do, and then you're like, well, wait, maybe this would be better. Yeah, no, I decided to stay with my original thought, especially with the frame that I had picked out and whatnot. But I love this, and I'm not in general a pastel type person. I usually like brighter colors, but for whatever reason I really liked this this card kit, and I liked how the colors went together and everything kind of blended really well together. So I was kind of excited, because I like when I get things that I wouldn't normally buy for myself, and it kind of gives me a different perspective on things. I think that's why I like to get kits. They give me things that, one, I probably wouldn't buy myself to try, or sometimes I get things that I want to try but I didn't want to spend the money on myself. So it's nice to get a little bit of it, and you get to try it and see if you like it, or to see if, yeah, I'm glad I didn't spend my money on, you know, a ton of that, because that's not something that I really want to do. So that's my thing with kits. I also, for me, I get bored, so I like new things all the time, and I like these particular kits because, again, you're not getting a ton of everything. You're just kind of getting enough to see if that's what you really like. And then they also have, paper packs and different things that you can buy at the Scrapping for Less store that go along with the kit. So if you really like the kit and you want to get more of the cardstock that comes with it, I know they're selling a package of the cardstock and different things like that. So that's kind of exciting. Now for this one, I did push the stamped image inside, and then the frame I did pop up with some foam tape, and then the sentiment I popped up with some foam tape as well. And then I finished this off with just a couple of the enamel dots from the collection. And that's going to just about finish off this fourth card. And then the final card I will be making is done with sketch number 4 and collection number 1. I'm sorry, I was confused for a minute. Collection number 1 is Hello Spring, and it's Hello Spring paper from Scrapping for Less. Hello Spring stamp by Scrapping for Less, enamel dots by Gina Marie Designs, and ephemera from Scrapping for Less. And I really like this ephemera too. I thought this was really pretty, but I was going for something a little bit different, and I don't know. I didn't want to use the ephemera this time, but I'm sure you'll see cards later in the month with this on there. But this is where I use the die. Instead of, if you see sketch number 4 that has that strip across the top, and instead of using this strip of paper, I decided I was going to use this die. So what I ended up doing was taking just a Copic marker and coloring. I cut it out in white cardstock, and then I just colored it with my Copic marker, and I colored it with G99. It's a nice olive tone, and I just thought that went well with the papers and the kind of the grass that's in the papers, and so I liked that one. Or I liked the idea of using that die cut to use as the strip that goes across instead of using an actual strip. And then I decided on my papers I wanted to use, and the back panel that isn't the entire size of the card is 3 1/4 inches, right? No, it's 3 7/8 inches by 4 1/4 inches. And then, like I said, I used the die cut after I colored it, and that's going to be the strip. And then the piece that is on the top, or the top layering piece, is 3 1/2 inches by 2 3/4 inches. And so then what I did was I took the piece of vellum. Oh, I did cut out the banners too here. And the banners are all 3/4, no, right? Yeah, 3/4 of an inch. And they're just different lengths and sizes. They don't have to be really long because they're going to be covered up by that top panel anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But then what I did was I took the vellum that we got as part of the kit, I cut it down. I just cut a strip. I cut it in half, and then I cut a strip from that half that is about 2 1/2 inches wide. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp, and I'm going to heat emboss the sentiment Hello Spring on the vellum. And I'm using the green Your Next stamp that, like I said, I got in the past kit because I like that green in it. I think it goes well with the kit as far as the tone of that green. And then I'm going to wrap kind of that strip around the top layering panel that I have there. And then I'm just going to end up gluing that down so that it stays in place. And I was going to use the liquid glue, but then I thought that the tape runner would be a better idea just to get that adhered. And then to make sure that it kind of stayed down on the front, you'll see me in a minute kind of pop it open so in between, you know, the vellum and the cardstock, and just put some of the liquid glue down around the areas that would be underneath the stamp. So that will just make sure that that kind of stays down. And then I just piece this card together. So putting that bottom layer down and then putting the die cut down. I did use the liquid glue for that because it's very thin and I wanted to make sure that it was going to stick well. Now the die is perfect size for about 4¼ it's about 4½ inches, so you just got to cut a little bit off. But there you'll see where I'm kind of sticking the glue, and I'm sticking it under where it was stamped, so you won't be able to see it through the vellum, but it'll just, like I said, make sure that it adheres onto it nicely. And then there's my little banners that I'm gonna pop down underneath or on top of that bottom panel, and then, like I said, pop that top panel up there. Then I just add 2 enamel dots at the very end on the top, just to give that little bit of finish on there. And that is pretty much it. That is it for all 5 of my cards with the March 2020 Flavor of the Month card kit. I appreciate you joining me. I hope you enjoy checking out all of the different cards from the blog hop, from all of the awesome designers that we have on our team and the guest designers. And I really am hoping everybody is doing well in this time that's kind of uncertain and everybody is a little on edge with everything that's going on. I hope that you can take a few minutes out and check out all of these videos and hopefully make you feel a little bit better. I know for me, crafting makes me feel better about life in general, or at least makes me not think about it, I guess, maybe a better thing. I'm just not thinking about it because I'm thinking about what I'm doing, so maybe we all need to do that once in a while, just as long as you're sanitizing your hands and washing them. So thanks for joining me again. I hope everybody has a great day, and make sure you jump to the next person on the hop. Take care.